Welcome to another Trackalerts live. And of course, tonight we'll be discussing whether it's time to fix Jamaica's medical exemption rule. And this was an article written by Coach Vaughn, The Road to Champs. And of course, many of you would have known Coach Vaughn as the man behind the Road to Champs page. Coach Vaughn, welcome to another Track Alerts Live.
Yeah, man. Pleasure to be here, as always,
Yes. And of
from
course,
start to
tonight
finish.
we are discussing your opinion piece, which will be published on the Track Alerts website soon, www.trackalerts.com. Time to fix Jamaica's medical exemption rule. What is behind this story? Why do you believe it needs to be fixed from where it is now?
I mean, if you go back to when the medical exemption came in, it was brought in at a time where it was difficult to find a full set of athletes to compete, and you always wanted your best athletes up at representing you at the highest level. But we've seen where the quality of athletes have improved, and more consistently, you have a broad set, especially in the sprint events up to 400. You have a broad set of athletes who are good. And even recently in the hurdles now, which is really the bone of contention of why I wrote the article, because I'm not liking what I'm hearing through the wayside, allegedly between Broadbell's medical exemption as well as Tyler Mason being on the bubble. So that's really what sparked it, because you always want your best, but there comes a time when even if your best is not ready at your trials period, if other athletes have proven fit enough to be at the championship or at the event that you're selecting the team for, those athletes who actually compete and who actually make that qualifying mark should be given the nod over someone who invoked a medical exemption based on their performance, prior performance, that is, current world ranking, as opposed to someone who actually ran, has the qualifying standard. And we've seen where in Jamaica they have actually, there was uproar. If you take it back to '08 with Shelley Fraser and those other two ladies, if those ladies never went in because they were chanting for someone else with more experience and more decorations to their names, I mean, we would have never been introduced to someone like in the likes of Shelley Fraser Price. So that's why I think it's time to change, because you have a good set of athletes now. You have a good, array of athletes to choose from. So why go back to a system that was put in place to safeguard good athletes going?
Teddy McCook, former J-Trace president, former NACAC president, and who
Hmm.
also was a member of World Athletics Council, once said, one, two, three, and the argument is over. Do you agree with Teddy?
100%, especially if those three athletes have hit the qualifying mark. And that's the thing for me. You have athletes who hit the qualifying mark, athletes who are even ranked in the world by World Athletic standards have hit the mark. And, you just, those guys, girls should be given the opportunity, because this is not high school championships where you're earning for points. We're earning for livelihoods right at this point. And I think sometimes because the rules are so sketchy, or they don't follow their own rules, because I think a couple of years ago, Kemar Campbell was literally, they twisted his arm for him to come down to the trials to run the 1500 or the 3000, whichever long race he runs, or 5000. I don't remember which one it was, but they twisted his arm to come down. He had already had the qualifying mark for the meet, for the international meet, and he had to show presence at the national trials when he already qualified. Pretty much, he could have just choose him already. But then you have another athlete who, because they're ranked in the top three, they don't run, and they get to say, "Hey, I'm not feeling so well this weekend. Put in my medical exemption," and that person gets to go, and it's just not fair across the board. The consistency is very inconsistent. So that's why I take take it to heart the way it's being applied.
I don't know if you can see this story on the screen.
Not so no, I can't. I'm not able to see it from.
And, the story was written all the way back in 2005, the
Hmm.
first day of January, or the first day of the year, 2005.
Hmm.
And the headline, J3 to review selection policy. And it was written by, do you know who?
Who, me?
It was actually published in the Gleaner, Jamaica Gleaner.
Okay,
And it
that
was
was
written
me.
by yours truly, Anthony Foster.
All
And I'm
right,
going to read.
please.
Former Jamaica Amateur, well, at that time it was Amateur Athletics Association, but former J3
Hmm.
president Neville Teddy McCook is the new chairman of the J3 selection committee. McCook, who also at the time was IWF, which is now World Athletics Council member and era representative for NACAC, will head the six-member team. And of course, it gave the other selection committee members at the time: Brian Smith, um, Carl Long, Vilma Charlton, Grace Jackson, and Clive Walters. But the Gleaner at the time has learned that they plan to change the controversial selection policy and are slated to meet soon to discuss the subject, which recently elected Howard Harris as president. When contacted at the time, it was Garth Gale who was the Gen Sec. He was tight lipped and also refused to confirm McCook's appointment.
Hmm.
But what I want to get to is that in a telephone interview with McCook, when he spoke about his new position within the organization, he said, "I have been asked to be chairman of the selection committee, and I want to continue with where he spoke about it." Well, he was talking about the selection policy posed problems for J3s at the Sydney Olympic Games. And of course, you know what happened there, because Peter Gay Dowdy was replaced in the women's 100 by, you know who?
Was that Slovenia's? Was that Merly?
Merly Natty. She was replaced by Merly Natty, of
Yeah.
course. You understand? But before Sydney, the first three were automatically guaranteed a spot
Hmm.
at the Olympics. Now, the controversial rules, or the controversy spark a rule change, which came about when Pat Anderson led administration took office in 2000.
Hmm.
And at that time, it was the first two and then the third person to be decided on the selection committee. And that's how this what you call it, this you call it the controversial medical exemption
Medical
rule would
exemption.
have came
Right.
about.
Hmm.
So we are back in all the way into 2025, and this rule still seems to pose a problem. And according to you, we need to do away with this rule, because I totally myself support Teddy's opinion, where one, two, three, argument done. You close it down right there.
Hmm.
And but do you think though the J3s will ever think about changing the rule, or because we are not as strong and wide as the United States of America, it's best for us to keep that
Hmm.
rule, to allow a person who is ranked in the top three of the world to be included in the team, say something like this had happened to a Usain Bolt, at the Olympic trials.
Right.
Are you saying because he hurt just before the race and someone who was third ran 10-2 and has never broken 10-2, you're saying that Usain Bolt or whosoever it is, Kishane Thompson, should not be considered because they picked up a slight injury at the trials?
Let's be clear. If the athlete in that quote unquote bubble spot has ran the qualifying mark for the games at which they're trying out for, they have, by virtue of running in that finals or in that meet, qualified, and they should get the nod, regardless of who has the number one, two, or three ranking. Right now, there is some merit to the top two being obvious and the third one being not so obvious. But the medical exemption is what really is my bone of contention, because you can't. So in the case of Broadbell, when I look back at the J3's ruling, the current rule that was the form that's put out for June 10, 2024, I think that's the current form. You have to apply for that medical exemption before the meet starts. You can't apply the meet arbitrarily after you've ran a heat. That's like applying for medical exemption because you felt a tweak at the third hurdle and like, oh, I'm going to stop medical exemption because I'm number one in the world. You don't get that opportunity, especially when the other four guys ahead of you who went 1, 2, 3, 4, run the qualifying mark. You should not be allowed. It's just tough luck for you at that point. You hurt yourself in the warm up. Tough luck for you at that point. There's no way around it, because I take a particular offense to it, because if we are saying Jamaica has all these wonderful athletes, why don't we put them all on display when they qualify? Think back to Team USA a couple of years ago, and I know USA is different, right? Because they're going to be facing a lawsuit if they did something like this in the USA. The relays, I love the USA because everybody knows the relays is up for grabs. Everybody knows that, straight up. There is no questions about it. If the shot putter got up the next day and ran 8.9 in the 100, he can get a leg on a 4x1, right? If he ran 43 seconds in the 400 that next day, he could get a leg on a 4x4. We get that, right? But that's not how Jamaica runs. So if we're saying that we have all these athletes, put them on display, let them run. Because I think you're ultimately killing the thought of some kids to try. Because if you're not up there with the top brass athletes right throughout your career, you'll never get on the team if you end up third place at the championships. Mm-hmm. But if it's clear as day that the top two spots go and then the third one is left to a committee, I'm open to that, so long as not the caveat that someone didn't run. Those people have to run to be considered for that third spot. You can't not show up and then decide, I'm going to run 2 meets at the Diamond League or Golden Spike or whatever the meets are before, to try to get the qualifying mark. You have to show up at the trials, just like how you forced Kemar Campbell to come and run at the trials when he's the only one who would the qualifying mark. You have to run. That's just how I see it, because then you're basing it on meritocracy when people actually compete for their spot, and not some, I don't want to call it nepotism, but it's nepotistic. That's the closest word I could use. It's nepotistic in its spirit. And we can't develop the athletes like that, because people are not going to consider buying a plane ticket, renting a hotel room, or training for 3, 4, 5 months to be on the bubble, and then all of a sudden Mrs. Mention or Mr. Mention, or as they say in Jamaica, such man show up and you can't run. That doesn't work.
I think that Kemar Campbell thing was foolishness. I honestly believe it was foolishness, because I remember at the time, yes, he has no competition at the time.
Zero.
And he would have qualified easily anyway. Even if he had finished last or he didn't even make the final, based on the rules, the fact that he would have already had the qualifying standard, you'd still have to pick him to go to the team. And to tell him that, hey, you still have to turn up at the trials, that was tough. And
that was ludicrous.
Yeah, I think it was stupid, in other words. And they shouldn't have allowed or forced him, to turn up at the trials knowing that, he has no competition, But
Mm.
again, we have seen where, the J Trays, really has never failed to surprise us, when it
Let,
comes on to.
let's look at this. I hear the comment section. I hear the fans, borderline fanatic, right? Because they want the best. We have to send out the best team. We have to win the race. We have to win the race. To what is the purpose of winning the race? How does it really translate into something tangible that makes a meaningful contribution to Jamaica? Now, get straight. It's nice to see the flag go up and you hear the national anthem, right? But what does that do for the average person in Jamaica apart from when you block off a tree and beat down the pot cover them? Because at the end of the day, sports tourism right now in Jamaica doesn't even contribute 1% of the national GDP. Actual tourism is about 34%. But sports tourism, money generated from the athlete's influence, is still
Yeah.
less than 1%. Right? If you look at reggae music itself, reggae music contributes maybe like 18 or so percent towards it. And that's a global presence. I'm speaking to a lady today. Usain Bolt hasn't run since 2016, and she's still talking about Bolt. But does she have a Usain Bolt jersey? No. She has an Emirates jersey going to a soccer game today in the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. So what we're saying is we're marginalizing the potential of a Javon Minzy. You're marginalizing the potential of a Damian Wanless. This is from back in the 90s. You're marginalizing Tyler Mason, who's now 30, right? To the likes of a Broadbell, which is nothing against any athlete. It's just that I think every athlete should be given that fair opportunity to represent the country, that so many don't want them to leave and go to other countries. Right? There's a lot of finger pointing on those athletes saying that they should be barred, they should be this, whatever. But the reality is, why am I sticking my neck out on this chopping block when their favorite athlete shows up and says, hey, my left toe is hurting me from doing my spin move in a discus. The doctor said to be ready by the meet. Okay, you get to go because you're ranked. That doesn't make any kind of sense, and we need to get away from that rule. Top 3 and be done with it, because Jamaica has enough athletes. Allow everyone a fair chance, because I don't want to train all season, and because only one time you run my 998, I can't make the team because the next man run 9-8 3, 4, 5 times already for the season. But him go run 10-2 at trials. That don't make no sense. I beat you at trials. That's the thing there.
Yeah. As I said, I know it's a very touchy point. I know some people will agree, some people may not agree, and that's just part of life. But I understand perfectly what you're saying, because if you get yourself in that position, then you're going to have to find a way to deal with it, because as I said, you don't want to get into a position where you handpick, and in a case like a Tyler Mason now, maybe wondering, what if this young man, well, is he still young? But what if he wanted to say, hey, if I'm not going to the World Championships, I'm going to end my season? Now he is unsure as to if he will get the chance to go or he will not go. And then if he's not going, he said it makes no sense. I'm going to train up to September. So I understand your
It
point,
makes no
because
sense.
that will be unfair.
At best, broad belt should be the alternate, and that alternate only gets invoked if one of the other three gets injured, not
Yeah.
run 13-3 gets injured.
And as you talk about that, all in the game is always in the game. And he commented, and I'm hoping I will be able to share the comment on the screen. But he is saying, hello, it's unfair to Mason, who went and got the job done at trials, but is on the verge of having his first outdoor world championship taken away from him. Broadbell should go win the Diamond League final so all four guys can go. That is coming from All in the Game, who I said always in the game.
If that's the avenue for broadbelt, go get that Diamond League. But those three gentlemen deserve to run, just like Shelley showed up to run. I never heard anyone said Shelley applied for some medical exemption, right? She
Well,
showed up and she got
she
the
wouldn't
third
get
place.
it because she's not ranked in the
Exactly.
top three in the world.
Yeah, but but even so, there were some people just put her on the team because it's her last go around. No, give the Tinas and the Tias and the Lana Reeds a shot to get there first. How about that?
Yeah, or if she turn up to the trials and of course secure her spot, then you can't take away that from her.
And exactly what she did. She showed up and earned her
Exactly.
spot. No, there's no controversy about her legacy. Fair and square.
And that is why we have to be careful of how we do these things.
Because you want to set a precedence of integrity, right? Where athletes really understand the rules. Because again, another point of contention I have was how they treated Oblique Seville. Because that waiting on Seville to be ready was unfair to the other 7 gentlemen in the race. And unfortunately, that's just how I see it. And I think that's why if I was in charge of J3 and those bodies, a lot of things would change. A lot of those decisions last minute would change. I'm hearing that there's a certain camp that sends in, a bunch of medical exemptions before the meet, even though the athletes may not be injured. Just in case something happens, they could invoke it
But how many
because of what
persons we
happened
have?
with one of the athletes before.
Yeah, but how many persons we have that would be qualified for medical exemption? How many persons
Well,
Jamaica have that rank in the top three in the world?
this particular camp has had a history of high-ranking athletes, right? So, and it's alleged, right? I don't know. I haven't seen any paperwork. But if that is a constant thing, if that story is true, if that's a constant thing, why isn't the organizational body saying, management, why do you have so many athletes year after year after year who are applying for medical exemption? We need to investigate your camp. We're not doing that, are we? It just doesn't make sense. At the end of the day, they just need to get rid of the medical exemption because we have evolved. Jamaica's track and field have evolved. Every year, the media jumps on the champs and say how much great talent Jamaica has. But then at the next level, you don't see them. You're not seeing them because they went to college and disappeared. You're not seeing them because they went to, a training camp in Jamaica and just didn't get any better. It's because they were not given a fair slate at even playing field to come down and try out.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of it. And you don't hear about them because they're busy, taking care of self. And so many athletes will defect. I think we're mentioning a couple of years ago, some athletes left and went to Bahrain and Turkey, and they ended up in the 100-meter final with Bolt and Nesta and those guys, right? So in a race of 8 athletes, I think 5 or 6 of them were Jamaican. So you think about those other 3 guys who are now in that race final. If they had stayed in Jamaica, right, and not qualify, or qualify and not be given a chance to run, they'd be home watching from their couches.
Yes, yes.
So you have to be smart, and we have to realize we don't want to set up the kids for failure. And if you're not giving them the fair shot to get in there, I'm sorry. Like I said, the only thing is like the relays, like Team USA. For example, Cindy McLaughlin, she doesn't run the 400 at the USA trials. Ryan Benjamin doesn't run the 400 trials, but best believe everybody knows they're going to be on the final of the 4x4. And to me, that's okay. Everybody understands that, but there's no way they're going to. I should run the 400 this year. I don't feel I run the 400 hurdles. It's never going to happen. So if Jamaica has all these wonderful athletes, let's put them on display, and let's see, the athletes go through the system, see who really has it to stay along. And if your career is only 2 years, it's only 2 years. If it's 10 years, great, it's 10 years. But don't take away the time that I could potentially have, because since that situation with Bolt and Minzy in 2016, I have not seen Minzy.
Mm-hmm.
And Minzy is not a bad athlete. He might have done some knucklehead stuff at Carif as a youth, but we haven't seen him as a professional properly. So,
and that's a comment we were talking about on your screen now from All in the Game, that was saying, it's really unfair to Mason, who may not get what he deserves, and that is just the unfortunate thing about this rule where persons are given a second chance, if they're not able to run. But do you think this rule will ever be changed?
It will change when the dinosaurs leave the sport, right? And I think how we look at the athletic landscape is kind of like a mirror image of the Jamaican government itself. To me, there's no reason why there are certain people who have been in politics when I was 10 years old should still be in the offices. Why are we not changing these people? Why is that? We're just shuffling them around from portfolio to portfolio to portfolio to portfolio. It's like nobody fights to keep nobody has to fight to keep their job, right? They just stay in the job.
Yes.
Yes. It's like working at Costco in the USA. Nobody quits that job. You die in that job because you get so many benefits, right? And this is a country we're talking about. We need transparency. We need change of thought. If we're going to really move this cart forward, you have to keep changing the drivers. You have to keep changing the oil. You have to keep changing the gasoline that's in there. You have to keep pushing it forward. You can't, keep moving with the same people because the same mentality. You have to change it as time goes on. I just want the best for the country, not the best for one person.
Yeah. And Virginia is saying, I hate it. This kind of decision can destroy an athlete's future. And I know you agree. I don't have to ask you what do you think about her comment.
It does go back to even Peter Gay Dowdy. Think about that Peter Gay Dowdy situation. One of the most talented young ladies coming out of St. Jago, went to Carifta, did super well at Carifta, went to LSU, ran really well, comes to trials and loses her spot. Loses her spot. And again, I'm not saying they're all going to be great, great athletes, but it would have been nice that she had gotten her spot fair and square and probably been on the team with her teammate, Suzette Lee. Yeah. Been on the team with her college mate, Astia Walker. But that didn't materialize because they invoked the rule for Merlene. But then, back in 88, Donald Quarry qualified for the 200. And they never took him. I think Donald Quarry finished first or second in the 200 with the qualifying mark for the Seoul Olympics. And they never took DQ. How do you not take Donald Quarry?
Definitely nonsense that J Trace is supporting. One of our other comment coming in. But you're talking about Donald Quarry and they
Yeah,
didn't
they
take
didn't
him to
take.
the
I don't
Olympics.
even think they put him on the 4x1 that year. They just did not take him because they said he was too old. Allegedly, that was the that was it. I was what 14 years old, and I was like, how do you not take Donald Quarry, the gold
Wow.
medalist? How do you not take him? And he beat these young guys, and that's why Merlene switched and went to Slovenia because there she could run until she was 50 on a national team.
Well, another comment coming in. If the athletes who finish in the top three all have achieved the qualifying mark, they should be allowed to go to the championships.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like for example, the men's 400 this year, right? The men's 400. So let's say because it's only Bovell McPherson, I believe, has the qualifying mark, and Bovell finished, I think, fifth or sixth in the finals at trials. Now, if
Six.
nobody else sixth, if nobody else runs the qualifying mark, I don't have a problem with the association saying, Bovell, do you want to run this 400? Sure.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that because no one has the qualifying mark other than him. But if McPherson, if McDonald, Powell, and who was it that finished third? Um, the other person that finished third. If they all run 44.6 between now and then yeah, they get to go. But if none of them get to do it by when entries are due, I think it's August 24th or August 30th, then Bovell has the opportunity to run. And Bovell will be on that 4x4 as well because he finished sixth.
Yep.
So I think that's where it should be. But we'll see what happens. But we have to start rewarding the athletes for their hard work and the merits they bring. That's my So please go check out the opinion piece over there at Trackalerts. Should be posted any day now, anytime now, and we're gonna have it.
Virginia, again, is saying even at times athletes qualify and the J Trade don't give them a chance to compete in a championships. And as I said, the J Trade has been under fire for a little while. And you'd wonder, when things will be changed. They're under fire in recent times. Athletes saying, we are not being treated good, nobody cares about us, and stuff like that. And importantly, for our field event athletes, for people who could easily, once they are named to the team, could easily win medals in Tokyo. 3-1 at the Olympics last year, and one only missed out because of injuries. So it's very tough, and it's hard for us to lose so many top athletes at once.
I mean,
And
what
you'd
what do you what
think
do you
this would
expect?
be a lesson.
I mean, what do you expect if I'm not guaranteed an opportunity to be on the stage to earn, and I'm not being compensated in any way, shape, or form before that happens? Then why should I stick around? That is a big question a young man or young lady has to answer. For the married folks, it's a little bit of a deeper answer. It's a little bit of a deeper decision because now you have to consider your spouse, if there are kids involved, if you own a house, and so forth. But for those gentlemen who probably are on the single market, please pack your stuff, pack your overnight bag, and jet away and take care of yourself because you're going to need it in the future.
Jet away and take care of yourself indeed. Virginia, again, we must say we welcome your comments. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate you joining us. Always joining Track Alerts Live. Always want to contribute and let your voice be heard in track and field. And I'm sure your comments will not only stop here. I'm sure it will go as far as to the boardroom of the Jamaica Administrative Athletics Association. But J Trace is accepting this nonsense because the championship is in September and they are trying to say he will be ready. And I think Virginia is talking about broad belt in this case.
She also asked the question, if Tia gets healthy by September, should they allow her to compete? And my answer is no. 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 What are you going to
Yeah,
take? Shelly? The answer is no. I'm sorry.
I totally agree with you. And Margaret, there should only be one trial for all athletes. Two or three go through. End of story. One trials. Will we ever see
We
that?
should Maybe I should make a T-shirt. One trials. I like the idea,
One
Margaret. One
trials
trials.
t-shirt, you know?
Mm,
Because, as I said, yes, we are not as big as the US, but at the end of the day, we still want to make sure we please those who we are there for, and it's the athletes. And, you know, maybe as you said, stop it. One, two, three. Argument done. So you know if you didn't get in that one, two, three, come back again next year. You know, all in the game. And Brian Level, unfortunately, looked like he was possibly affected by oblique injuries delay, given, you know, his time. And then, of course, he came back and won the 200. And you spoke about this earlier, Coach Vaughn, that
yeah.
may we don't hear that is the case, but
Mm.
it could have been the situation that affected Brian Level.
Yeah. I mean, it's illegal, first of all, for that to happen, because you cannot. The rule clearly states from World Athletics that you cannot provide medical treatment unless XYZ, and those protocols were not followed. They just decided that, you know what, we're gonna hold the race for oblique because we want to see oblique win, and oblique should win and run second or whatever. Totally unfair. Once again, if I was in management in one of those other camps, I am calling the flag. I am paying $100 and I'm contesting it, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if my eyes did not deceive me, one of the guys who actually worked on Seville at the start of the race hugged him at the end of the race. And how can you have an official showing that level of favoritism at me?
Oh, big one. And Virginia, again, Samantha Carla Mercedes Hall. This is very interesting. Niece, I love this platform. Very
Appreciate y'all.
interesting topic, very interesting point, Coach Vaughn, because as I
Yes.
said, you know, we have to try and make sure we don't continue to disappoint our athletes because we don't want to do that. So
Hmm.
we have to make sure we get it right,
Just do
and
the right
you know
thing,
we
people.
don't want
Just
to find
do.
ourselves in trouble. That
Yeah.
no rules, that's just politics. You know, that's coming from Virginia. You know, really appreciate her comments coming in. You know, I have
Mhm.
take this one from my good friend Paul Miles from Paul Miles Foundation. You know, and he's saying revamp, restructure, reorganize the J trades. Too many. What's that? Too many fries and no change.
I don't know what it says. It's hard for me to read that one.
But you know, big up yourself again, Paul Miles, you know, the latest big supporter of track and field, and I big up yourself, Samantha Mercedes Hall. Congratulations on another win at the National Senior Championships. I saw your comment. I appreciate your comment, and I have to be careful because I don't want anyone in a particular place or in high places to treat you like they did Taekwondo Tracy, and again, I'm just going to touch on this very quickly, Coach Yvonne, because I spoke about I spoke about things that are happening, and look on the case with Taekwondo Tracy. You know, it was said that he disrespected and all the stuff like that at the was it at the last World Championships?
Yeah, it was at a camp, and
Yes,
he was asked
at
to
the
leave.
camp. And then a couple of weeks before the Olympic trials, he was written to appear before a disciplinary committee. How do
Hmm.
you, almost 1 year or about 1 year after, trying to derail this man's chances at a national trials by inviting him to meet with the disciplinary committee? Why
Didn't
wasn't
meet.
it done months before? Why wasn't it planned for after the trials? And then guess what?
What?
People start make noise about it, and we didn't hear
Hmm.
nothing more about it. He didn't even appear. They didn't say they throw the case out or anything like that.
Hmm. You just
But
never hear about it.
you just never hear about it. And I think that's a very good way to wrap up our live. And as I said, I can see Virginia, telling Samantha Hall that it's, freedom of speech. She should not be scared. And yes, it's freedom of speech. And, we don't want people to be scared around here. But at the same time, we love all our athletes. We respect all our athletes for what they are doing for us. And we want to make sure we, protect them in the best way possible. And sometimes, a lot of times, many people don't read, but they will hear our voices. And again, big up yourself, Samantha Hall. We appreciate having you here, and we hope to see great things from you in Tokyo. And Samantha is one of our chores that has been performing well, and we hope with what happened to those persons who decided to go after Turkey that the powers that be will step up now and support Samantha Hall and other chores who don't have the luck of getting the quote unquote, I'm not even going to say lucrative, but getting sponsorships. But again, really nice to have you, joining us in this discussion, sending in your comments. We really appreciate them, and we wish we were able to read all of them. We planned that we're only going to go 30 minutes. We are at 45 minutes.
Yeah,
So,
past my
Coach
bedtime.
Vaughn, that's where we'll end it for tonight. Any final words before we go?
No, I think it'll be interesting also to to look at how athletes are probably missing the mark when it comes to getting the type of sponsorship or getting the kind of traction out of the sport. Because I know a young man, he's never been to any world champs or Olympics. He's been to Carifta for a small island nation, and he has been able to start a community of runners, and he's gotten some really major players on his side now. So sometimes it isn't about getting to the meet. Sometimes it's about the value and the purpose that you've placed on your position in the sport. And we could talk about that. That's something else, that I think some of our athletes need to be exposed to.
On that note, thank you again, viewers. Thanks for your contribution. Thanks for tuning in. And we hope to see you again on another Trackalerts Live on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when we'll have a special athlete in our athlete